Welcome back, one and all, to the third and final build of the Lola Chihuahua build. We're recovering from the mistake that was made with the audio, but I'm going to go ahead and talk through this build and kind of talk through some of the things that we dealt with as we put this together. This particular build, as we're going to see in this, is installing the Core i3 6100 Skylake into the motherboard, a larger than necessary 170, but we're going to go ahead and, or Z170. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll continue. Most of this video is going to be me just talking through the parts that we were seeing, or as we learned a few things. So let's get started. Alright, so we're doing a little bit of unboxing action here with the i3. And just to go over once again, the i3 6100 is actually one of the best, I guess, for the i3 series for power to value, and because of this it makes a great choice for a workstation. 2 cores, 4 threads. It's really a good chip, and going through some of the benchmarks as we went through this after the build was finished, and I'll see if I post some of this up here, walking through my presentation of some of the clocks and or the benchmark results. But basically this chip is a particularly good one for workstation use, you know, even for use of just the 4 cores. So looking at the video, so you can see I'm actually looking at the comparisons of the Noctua cooler versus the stock Intel. You get about twice the performance out of that at the third party. This chip doesn't get very hot, so it's not really required. However, if you do use the stock cooler, you'll find that your temperatures are a little bit higher than what they would be with a actual third party. And you know, stated in the last video, this build actually turned out really well, but it's a bit of an overbuild. So we used the Z or a Z170, which is an overclock board, and then put a non-overclock chip in here for headroom later. And then also the fact that we used a 6100 and a third-party cooler to get better temperatures, in the sense that this machine's never going to get pushed enough to where it's probably ever going to get hot enough that that matters. You know, things like that. But that's okay. This was an interesting build. I really enjoyed the performance once we did get this up and running. And again, I'll see if I put the benchmarks up there. So moving right along, we're currently watching me fiddle around to get ready to install the CPU in here. And eventually, I'm positive, as I'm going through this footage, I'm positive we do get there. Like I said, this is the last in the series just because the editing became a little more difficult than I would have wanted to, just because of my little mistake with my camera. That will not happen the next time, I'll tell you right now. Anyway, this is the 6100 we're about to put in here. You can't see it even though we're trying to indicate it, or maybe you can. It isn't very clear. Alright, so one of the things that was nice about this board, being that even though it's an ATX, I'm actually pointing out where you put the pin 1 on there. That's great. Yeah, it's always good to make sure you put that in there correctly, even though it doesn't let you do it the wrong way. Oh, but one of the nice things I like about this board, it's an ATX board. So of course I had to use an ATX compatible case, which we talk about at length about how difficult that case was to actually use. But needless to say, I did find that at least it had some room. We transferred this board into another case. Sadly, we used the same vendor and discovered that this vendor is actually quite poor. And it is not a Cooler Master, as I accidentally stated before. It is the AeroCool. And this is an AeroCool Black RTS, I believe is the one we used in here. And we picked up another AeroCool afterwards and actually transferred Chihuahua into it, and came up with some of the same issues. So, you know, I'm gonna say that I'm a little disappointed in the brand, and I'm probably not gonna use them going forward. So, and I will probably talk more about this on some other videos. Alright, so we're going to do something that's somewhat controversial throughout the community, only because we're about to put the thermal paste, and I'm sure there are many people with much more experience in this than I am that are going to cringe when we do this, only because they're either thinking we're doing it wrong, not putting enough, putting too much, whatever the case is. This stuff does not conduct, so even if I put way more than that, this is not going to have any issue. But looking at it now, I might have even put too little. But again, this particular chip doesn't get hot. Not really. We're not overclocking. We're not going to do base clock changes or anything like that. So we're not going to have a problem with this. Oh, and just a call out as well. Something that was given to me that was kind of a mistake that I did actually acknowledge is that we put this board on the bag. Well, this is actually true, and I wanted to go ahead and call this out. And I recognize that we shouldn't have done this for the static. The inside of the bag is capable of being static free, but the outside is not. So this was actually a mistake, and we won't be doing this anymore going forward. So she is very carefully putting this together. We are balancing to put the cooler and the bracket to hold it on there in the back. It's quite interesting that we've run through a couple of these cases as we're building these out, that it felt like these were two-person jobs on some of these. So I'll give some props to some people that do this on their own, and maybe it's just experience levels that make that a little bit easier. And there we go, mounting this Noctua cooler. Kind of the most exciting thing of this entire build was getting this all together. Look at that. Alright. Mounted and ready to go. Oh boy. I put the system down on that bag. Oh boy. Well, no issues to report, I can tell you. We managed to take care of that, I guess. I guess we didn't produce any static, interestingly enough. There are some coolers that I've found that actually they tell you to be very careful about how tight you put those down, because you can actually start crushing the CPU. And we certainly were very careful when we built the Blackintosh by using the Evo 212, which is a monstrous cooler. It was really difficult getting that into the case that we were going to use. But I may actually be talking about that. Who knows? Who knows? The audio was deleted. Alright, so we are continuing along, and at some point, the magic of editing, we will move on to the next segment of this actual build. Fascinating. Fiddling around with stuff on the desk, that's good. Okay, so we're about to install the Corsair memory. Great, so I happen to really like Corsair memory. It's mainly I would say probably just from good experiences. So there's probably some really good one like the G-Kill. This one is non-XMP memory. So it basically is standard DDR4 2133. And I did not buy the LED lit one, which incidentally, as we transferred this over to another case that looked like it was actually quite dark in there, I actually wished that I had some lights in it. So maybe next time we'll do some nice RGB magic. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and install the memory. Something that I was talking about to Jasmine and just kind of pointing out is the installation of memory. When you install memory, the Skylake and Kaby Lake non-enthusiast editions have dual channel memory, which is positive. I'm actually showing the colors. Jasmine asked a really good question, like, well, what does the colors actually mean? So talking through the dual channel versus quad channel, which we have with enthusiast, you need to install them in pairs, at least if you wish to have any decent performance out of them. And so I'm explaining that the colors are not there for decoration, but actually to indicate where you would install the pairs and where you would match them up. obviously worth checking the board first, but they're labeled on the actual board itself as to which ones go into 1 or 0 and 1, and essentially that's what we did. This is putting in 16 gigabytes of memory. Again, this is a bit of an overbuild considering it was going to do some compiles and kind of a Hackintosh and Ubuntu dual boot, which is what it's doing today. And in fact, it ended up being wildly powerful for what it was going to do. Probably could have got away with 8 gigabytes of memory. So we did the 16. I'm not regretting it, considering that we could have, I actually originally was considering doing 32, believe it or not. I was going to do 2 16s just because I could put 64 in this if I wanted to. And again, a little bit of an overbuild. Here we go. Yeah, so I was talking a little bit, of course you can't hear it, but I was talking a little bit about the dual channel and separating those off. Moving right along. Alright. I believe we are showing the memory bank indicators on the board. Very nice. Somewhere in the future we're going to actually do a X299 build, and I'm looking forward to that quad channel memory. I was going to build an X99 and I'm only waiting just for the 299 to come out in August. That's such a beautiful board. This is actually a budget board as well. I am a very big fan of Gigabyte motherboards. I'm actually a big fan of Gigabyte in general. I like their graphic cards quite a bit as well. I actually have 2 of them. For this particular build, we bought a 1050 Ti, the overclocked edition, all the way overclocked with the dual fans, and only because I really wanted to try a 1050 Ti. I avoided the 1050 just because of the basically it just being a 1050 Ti, the GP107 being shot in the leg and gimped, and so I wanted at least the full chip in the 107. But in my Blackintosh, I have a GTX 1080, the Extreme Gaming Edition, wildly overclocked, major overkill for this machine. This was in the Blackintosh, which we did not film, but later on down the line, when I get to the X299, we're trying to figure out whether it's going to be a 1080 Ti or it'll be a Titan XP. Not entirely sure. I might do something different with that one. I'm not entirely sure. It is going to be built for deep learning, so it's a question as to whether we go into Quattro land or not. I haven't decided yet. All right. So we went ahead and plugged in the fan. Something we did with this particular build as well is that we were trying to figure out where to plug fans in because the case had a fan controller. And here's some more installations of the final bits and pieces regarding the Wi-Fi card, and we did, at least at this time, due to the fact that I might do editing using FireWire, we did put a FireWire card in there, which we ended up never using, so I moved it out. But at this time we didn't have a GPU, so there was a GPU put in there later on, and this board doesn't have a whole lot of space for a lot of cards. So essentially, if you're using these PCIe 1X cards, like we had 2 of them, the Wi-Fi and the FireWire, the GPU was kind of blocked a little bit from the airflow standpoint, and I was a little uncomfortable having the card that you're seeing right now. I was a little uncomfortable having that card right underneath the GPU that we put in later. Yeah. Not a whole lot of interesting stuff to go by here. As you can see, we're just about done when we put everything in this. We went ahead and wired everything up. I will say this, when I moved this into the other machine and I started adding a lot of extra drives and a whole lot of other stuff, that thing turned into a serial ATA cable nightmare, and it looked like a crazy spider web of mess, and it was really hard to figure out how to cable manage it. Alright, when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of a retrospective and show the presentation that I produced that kind of walks through some of the benchmarks. So until then, folks, until then.